You're a new parent and things are going well. Your little boy or little girl are just over 1 year old and they're walking, they're talking, they're babbling a bit and saying mama, dada, and you're as happy as you can be. They're pointing out new colors, learning new things every day, and you just are overjoyed that you've lucked out with such a healthy and happy baby. But one day they get sick. Nothing serious, just a fever. It breaks eventually, but you notice that afterwards something's a bit off, something's different with your child. The words stop, the eye contact disappears, the laughter fades away, and you notice they begin to just kind of stare off into space as if the world does not make sense to them anymore. You stay up night after night begging for answers, scrolling through every form you can find, just looking for someone to validate your experience, someone to say you're not crazy and that this is something that can be fixed or helped or something can be done for your child. But everyone just tells you you're overthinking, or worse, that your kid has always been this way and you just didn't notice. But no, you know something's different, something's wrong. This is every parent's nightmare, watching their child slowly slip away into something they don't recognize. And if this was your experience, or you can imagine being in these shoes, what do you think you would say if someone came along and said that they could fix it, and that they were willing to fix it by any means necessary? Well, that's exactly what today's video is about. Health Secretary RFK Jr.'s declaration of autism as an epidemic, and how he plans to fix it in just 5 short months. Let's get into it.
This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families.
One thing we know with certainty is that vaccines do not cause autism.
Well, I do believe that autism does come from vaccines. And we're doing right here in the United States is a model for the rest of the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
According to RFK, autism rates are up over 300%, and he's now labeling autism as an epidemic. Not only that, but he also says he can figure out what is causing this epidemic in just 5 short months. If it all sounds a little wild to you, a little bit insane, well, that's only because it is. But let's break down these 2 big claims. First up, is autism really up 300%? And technically, the answer to that is actually yes. But we have to ask, up from when? The CDC report that RFK is referencing compares autism rates from year 2000 compared to that of year 2002. In year 2000, we were showing autism rates of about 1 in 150 kids. And in year 2022, we're showing rates of about 1 in, I believe, 36. So in actuality, it's actually closer to a 400% jump. Now, that certainly sounds scary, but before we panic, I think it's important to ask, why are those numbers increasing? And that's where things get a bit more complicated. Reason 1 is awareness. We simply just know more about autism now than we did 20 years ago. Doctors, teachers, parents, they're catching things that would have slipped through the cracks 20 years ago, and they're catching them a lot earlier, too. Which actually brings us to number 2. We just have way better screening tools now than we did 20 years ago as well. We got checklists, interviews, monitoring, all things that are designed to specifically pick up on autism and be more aware of it. And then number 3, and this is probably the most important one, is that the diagnostic criteria for what counts as autism has been greatly expanded from 2000. Simply put, back in the day, the definition of autism was much narrower, and if your kid was not in that specific box, he wasn't going to get diagnosed with autism. Back in 2013, the DSM-5, which is basically like the diagnostic Bible, expanded what exactly counts as autism. And this wider net simply means more children are going to be diagnosed with autism. So the takeaway here is that it's not exactly that more children are getting autism, it's that we're more aware of it, we're more able to point it out, and we're more able to respond to it now. But don't take it from me. The experts are all pretty much in agreement on this.
I think that there are a number of factors that are driving the increase in prevalence.
Such as
Broadening diagnostic criteria, perhaps younger age of diagnosis, and getting the diagnosis is a means of getting services, which are important for kids.
He says genetics play a role, not vaccines.
Is there any connection between autism and the measles vaccine?
So there's a lot of things that we do not understand as of yet about autism, but one thing we know with certainty is that vaccines do not cause autism. This has been studied extensively across multiple continents, and it's been well established in the scientific community.
So now that we've broken down the numbers, let's talk a bit about who's making these claims. See, the thing with RFK is that context matters a lot with this guy. This isn't just some guy coming in and talking about autism for the first time. He's been in the headlines and talking about this stuff for years.
That's a fit boy.
Oh, that video actually has nothing to do with autism. It just popped up while I was doing my research, and I figured if I had to see it. So, aside from his workout videos, RFK is also known for one thing: his stance on vaccines. RFK has been one of the loudest anti-vaccine voices in America for a long time now. He's been pushing the idea that vaccines cause autism, although study after study from across the world has shown that that is simply not the case. And just to reiterate, this is not something that's up for debate in the scientific community. The idea that vaccines cause autism has been thoroughly debunked in the scientific community. But RFK, still up to very recently, he's still hanging on to the idea.
Most of the things that people believe about my opinions about vaccines are wrong. All I've said about vaccines, we should have good science. We should have the same kind of testing, placebo-controlled trials that we have for every other medication. Vaccines are exempt from pre-licensing placebo-controlled trials, so that there's no way that anybody can tell the risk profile of those products or even the relative benefits of those products before they're mandated. I mean, we should have that kind of testing. I think most people agree with that.
And now that he's head of the health department, these views carry a lot more weight. And we can see how that's unfolding in real time. Do you remember the recent outbreak of measles in Texas and in Florida? That was actually the direct result of vaccine hesitancy. And let's take a look at how he responded.
And we're doing right here in the United States is a model for the rest of the world.
Do you see us as a model for the rest of the world?
No, because I think he's trying to distort the data, as he often does. Anna, we already have more cases than we've had nearly combined between 2020 and 2023. We've already exceeded that 4-year total, and we're just in the beginning of April. So no, we're not a model. Two, what he tends to do, and you and I were talking about this, is he continues to talk about things like inhaled budesonide, which is a steroid, clarithromycin, which is an antibiotic. As you know, I'm a pulmonologist. We have use cases for those medications, Anna, but that's not for the treatment of measles. Those are used in the cases of severe pneumonia from other causes. Somebody has maybe COPD. They are not used for things like treatment of measles. And that's why we're not the model. He's just putting out grossly false information.
Essentially, instead of treating it like the public health crisis it is, he's been downplaying it with soft and dismissive messaging. In fact, it got so bad that his top spokesperson ended up resigning over his muted response. And I get why. When kids are dying due to a wishy-washy response to an epidemic, to a preventable disease, then yeah, I can see why you want strong leadership in a situation like that. And to be honest, it already has a lot of people wondering how exactly is he going to handle this autism initiative if he's already fumbling something as clear-cut as measles. Speaking of which, we need to discuss his most recent genius idea of creating an autism registry. That's right, he wants to create a national database of everyone who has autism, and you can see more about that here.
The National Institutes of Health is reportedly assembling a massive autism data registry under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s leadership. CBS News on April 22nd reported that the registry will track autism cases using private health data from federal and commercial sources. The plan includes linking data from pharmacies, hospitals by the Department of Veterans Affairs, and insurance claims databases. The registry will also include smart device data and genetic test results to create a broad research database.
So, Secretary Kennedy, you have a lot of issues on the MAHA agenda, obviously, and I'm very curious if you could share some of the logic of choosing, for example, autism and food dyes and things as some of the kind of inaugural issues that you're coming forward with.
I would say, we're in a triage situation now, so we're choosing our priorities based upon the issues. Food dye is just a no-brainer. Nobody wants to eat petroleum. Everybody knows there's enough science out there that we know it's terrible for you. That causes health problems, but also behavioral problems. And so we can act on that now. Anything that we can act on, we're going to act on immediately.
Now, on the surface, I can maybe see why that seems appealing, but just think about this. We're talking about tracking private medical data for millions of people with no real clear safeguards here. And naturally, advocacy groups are already sounding the alarm because registries like this, more often than not, are used to target marginalized communities and not actually help them. And no, that's not just fear-mongering. History at 100% backs this up. And parents, autistic adults, medical experts, they're all pushing back because framing a condition like this does not generate support. More often than not, it's going to generate stigma. That combined with RFK's track record of vaccines and his public health messaging, it's really kind of hard to know where this is all going. So yeah, RFK's background, super messy, and it makes it hard to trust what exactly he's trying to do here. But in light of that, I think it's time we talk about his September deadline and what's going on with that as well. So yeah, RFK is saying that autism is largely caused by environmental causes, and he's going to find out that cause by September. Yep. As in just 5 months from now.
By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
Health Secretary RFK Jr. promising during the president's cabinet meeting that he will find out why autism rates are rising.
We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world.
In 2000, about 1 out of every 150 children was diagnosed with autism. Today, the CDC says it's 1 in every 36. RFK says the numbers are closer to 1 in 31.
That's a horrible statistic, isn't it? And there's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this.
And look, I get the appeal of this statement. It sounds actiony, sounds decisive, sounds like people are going to get things done, but the scientific community are not buying it, and me neither, and I don't think you should either, to be fair. Simply put, autism isn't really something you can just figure out in 5 months. We're most likely talking about a complex interlay of prenatal interactions, genetic sequences, and environmental factors. Yes, that's true, but scientists have already been at this for decades. There are different forms of autism, and it affects a wide array of people very differently. So trying to pin something down like that in 5 months just does not seem very possible. And more than just being unrealistic, it's dangerous because it sounds like it's going to be rushed. And when you rush things like this, when you rush science, when you rush research, you don't get good data, you just get false conclusions, usually. And those false conclusions usually lead to public mistrust, and that mistrust leads to more disinformation. And that's almost exactly what you don't want to have in a situation like this when we're dealing with a condition like autism. I know there's plenty of parents out there who probably get tons of conflicting advice as it is, and I know they do not want more on top of that, and they most definitely do not need any additional stigma for their family members and their children to make their lives any more difficult. So when RFK says something like he's going to figure this all out by September, the real question isn't even can he do it, or not even can he not do it. It's what if he pretends he can't, right? What if he pretends he has an answer, he gives an answer, and a lot of people just take that as the truth, but it's not actually verified by the scientific community. Okay, so we reviewed the numbers, we reviewed RFK's background a little bit, and then we also reviewed this crazy September deadline. But I want to step back and do something a bit different. I want to play devil's advocate for a bit. To really understand where RFK is coming from, I think we just need to sit down and take a look at his comments a bit more deeper.
This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it.
So here's my take. I don't think RFK is malicious. A lot of people kind of paint him as like just the villain in this story, but I don't know. I don't think that's true. I don't think he hates autistic people or autistic children. I think it's just something he's really passionate about, and he's trying to find answers in any way possible. I think when RFK talks about autism a lot and the way he throws out the numbers and everything, I think he does conflate what he's talking about to a specific type of autism. I think it's called regressive autism, which is kind of what I covered in the intro. It's that scenario where the children seemingly is developing fine. He's not showing any traits of autism, and then something happens, be it a vaccine or a sickness or something, and they begin to lose their development. So the speech goes away, the laughter goes away, and it seems to develop these autistic traits very rapidly, which is devastating for a lot of parents. And if that is a lens that he is looking through, I get why he's so fired up about this, and I get why he calls it an epidemic, because too, a lot of those families, a lot of these new parents, it feels like that for them, and I get that. I 100% do. I know there's like a push, there's like an idea, general consensus to say that with autistic children, autistic families, that they are not a burden. And I agree with that. That's not something I'm saying I don't agree with. But I also don't want to invalidate the other side of that experience, right? For a lot of parents who are going through this, it absolutely is a burden for them. Not necessarily the child, but grieving what you thought your child's future was going to be, grieving what you thought your experience as a parent was going to be. It's a really huge shift for a lot of people. The situation in itself is fundamentally overwhelming. So I get it. If RFK and his supporters think that some type of registry would stop just one additional child from regressing from another parent having to go through a similar situation, then I see why he'd push for something like that. So yeah, I get it. It might feel like a step in the right direction, it might feel like the right thing to do, but the thing is, most autistic cases are not regressive like he's displaying. Like most of the experts say, autistic prevalence is largely based off your genetic makeup, and not necessarily something that needs to be fixed. So yeah, while RFK Jr.'s heart might be in the right place, the real issue is that he's swinging at this problem with a sledgehammer when he needs more like precision tools. And that's really where the disconnect is here, right? It's not that he doesn't care, it's just that caring doesn't automatically make you right, okay? So what does all this mean for you? What's the call to action here? Well, first of all, you should educate yourself. The experts, people who have been studying autism for decades, not months, they all agree on one thing. Autism is complex. And yes, there are definitely environmental factors that play, but genetics play the largest role. Realistically, this is not something we're going to solve by September, and that's okay because we need careful solutions and not quick fixes. Second, I think we should be more mindful about how we discuss autism. When you throw out statements like RFK did about autistic people not being able to find love or not being able to use the bathroom, of course, I'm sure he was preserving those comments for people with the most severe cases, but when you do that, when you throw out blatant statements like that, it affects the community at large, right? You have to remember that autistic people, like all groups of people, are not a monolith. Some people need more support, some people need less, but they all deserve respect. Finally, and this is probably the most important one, stay critical. If RFK and his team roll out a report in September stating that they solved autism, I think you should question it. Listen to what the actual doctors and actual scientists and the advocacy groups are actually saying. If the experts back it up, great. If something seems off to you or fishy, then I'd say, yeah, maybe trust your gut on that one. Misinformation, it spreads super fast, and with something as important as autism, I don't think we can afford to get it wrong. But yeah, that's it for me. This has been Bridging the Gap. I'm your host, Vermillion, and of course, as usual, I would love to hear what you thought in the comments. Leave a like or a subscribe, and I would very much appreciate it. Small channel, hoping to grow. You know how it is. All right, see you in the next one. In fact, it got so bad that his own spokesperson, in fact, it got so bad that his spokesperson actually, in fact, it got so bad that his in fact, it got bad, in fact, it got so bad that his spokes, in fact, it got so bad that his spokes,